Hello, everyone. I have so many pictures I have taken all over Essex County pertaining to 1692. I thought I would share them with you and share the stories behind them. Here are several regarding the current site of the second meeting house at Topsfield, with pictures of the replica of the Salem Village Meeting House that currently stands at the Rebecca Nurse Homestead. The second Topsfield Meeting House stood at this very site in the old section of the Pine Grove Cemetery in Topsfield, Massachusetts, for over 30 years. This was where our ancestors gathered for both civic matters and religious worship. While Topsfield First Meeting House had stood on Meeting House Lane across from the Wilds House, the expansion of the population and the request of Raleigh Village residents who had to travel a distance to the first meeting house required a more centralized location. In 1663, the second meeting house was built, and the current site is pictured here. The meeting house served for both civic and religious affairs. The building itself measured 30 feet long, 28 feet broad, and 16 feet between joints, framed with massive oak timber and beam construction. Inhabitants were taxed as payment for the actual construction and could fund by either paying money or providing wheat and butter to equal their tax amount owed. Comfort was secondary. Glass panes were fitted for windows, but not in all the meeting houses. Some had windows with only open air once the window space was uncovered. Going forth for the length of this video, I will now only concentrate on the historical religious aspects of the meeting house and how it was used for religious service. The elevated pulpit stood central and elevated above the congregation, with a canopy above the minister to amplify his voice. He preached lengthy sermons that focused on theology, sin, disobedience, and fear. Tradition later held that Parson Joseph Capin's pulpit stood where he preached in the second meeting house at Topsfield, at the very spot where he was buried in 1725, pictured here. However, by 1725, the third meeting house had already been built at a new location and the burying ground had been established. More on Parson Capin shortly. Seating within the building reflected the rigid social order and tax brackets, with leniency toward the aged. Men sat on one side of the aisle and the women on the other. Servants, children, and enslaved people sat in the galleries. The early ministers shaped the spiritual atmosphere of the town in dramatically different ways. These guys were all too human. Thomas Gilbert, the first ordained at this location, was dismissed in 1671 for drunkenness during religious services. He was actually witnessed falling outside the entrance of the meeting house before service began. Jeremiah Hobart, the second minister ordained here, was accused of being caught in an intimate situation of sorts with Mrs. Simons, among other interesting situations involving other congregants. This did change, however, with the ordination of Reverend Joseph Capin, who enjoyed a long ministry until his death in 1725, a ministry that lasted 41 years. Though his notebook during 1692 has survived, there is no hint as to how he served the congregation during the witch hunt. The lore states that Parson Capin was broken-hearted for his congregants who were wrongfully accused. We don't know to what extent or why he chose to stay more on the quiet side, and it would not be fair to speculate his reasons. However, one document that he did sign was that of the ministers who advised against the use of spectral evidence. Danger among the community was also a reality, especially during King Philip's War. Just outside the meeting house on the southeast corner of the property stood the watch house, which was built in 1675. It was attended at all times by armed male inhabitants whose duty was to watch for a possible attack by Native Americans. This building was a place that stood through some of the most consequential years that would leave permanent marks on the town and on the descendants of those who lived, worshipped, and suffered within its shadow. What is truly special about this current site of the second Topsfield Meetinghouse is that anyone can visit any time during daylight hours to walk the grounds where many families walked this very land over 350 years ago. Since there is not a complete list of those who were accepted into full communion in 1673, I will name all of the members in full communion who walked this land that Parson Joseph Capon recognized prior to his time of ordination in 1684, beginning with the women whose names are most often overshadowed in the primary sources: Phoebe Perkins, Sarah Gould, Judith Dorman, Mary Esty, Catherine Town, Phoebe Town, Mary Town, Mary Dorman, Sarah Wilds, Elizabeth Howe, who was the mother-in-law to Elizabeth Jackson Howe, Mary Dwinnell, Lydia Nichols, Hannah Boardman, Mary Cummings, Mary Howlett, and either Martha or Margaret Reddington, as Abraham and Abraham Reddington Jr. and their wives were both alive in 1684. Then Sarah Bixby, Hannah Peabody, Elizabeth Simons, Mary Smith, Widow Andrews, who is most likely Grace Andrews, Mary Abbott, Mary Purley, Sarah Watson, and Sarah Cummings. The men: Francis Peabody, John Reddington, Abraham Reddington Sr., Joseph Bixby Sr., John Gould Sr., Thomas Baker, Thomas Perkins, John Peabody, Thomas Dorman, Ephraim Dorman, Samuel Howlett, Isaac Cummings, John French, Isaac Esty, James Howe Sr., Samuel Purley, Nehemiah Abbott, John Cummings, Thomas Perkins Jr., Daniel Hovey, John French. Please consider a donation to help the cost of travel and time well spent researching for my videos. The link to my video with more information will be found in the description box of this video. You will also find my sources linked in the description box of the full video, along with links to the Topsfield Historical Society and the Rebecca Nurse Homestead, which is where I took all of the pictures depicting the inside of the meeting house. Thank you.